Morning, everybody. We are really pleased to have the chance to talk with you this morning, in large part because your reaction to the intro was exactly spot on. There are places where I go where sometimes I feel like, well, I'm not so sure I want to speak, and maybe I'm a little nervous. That's just never the case in an audience like this with this crowd, because it feels like family, and we're just going to go right into it and get started. So I really do appreciate the introduction, and it is a bit of a mouthful. And yes, I'm an old guy, long time in the Air Force. But what we'd like to do is apart from the sort of the official biography, just share with you guys a little bit where we've seen God at work during that 32 years of our career. Because the question that we get asked many times is, how in the world did you go from Air Force pilot to Christian college president? And the answer is, this was not my plan.
And I never really, it's on, okay. And I never really thought of New York City as a retirement destination.
We've had to stop thinking of retirement as sort of a rocking chair on the porch thing, and more of a put new tires on retirement. Anyway, and just keep going. So
or get rid of both cars.
So I think, this transition probably, I don't know, the stage has been set for this for quite some time. I just think it took me a very long time to catch on, probably much longer than God would have preferred. We were married probably 4 or 5 years, plugged into a great church out in California. I was flying. It was good. And we were really very connected with our church family, particularly the pastor and his wife, and we just felt a call to serve. And so at that time, in my little pea brain, that meant leaving the United States Air Force and going to seminary and just being open to wherever God was calling us to go. And so we prayed through that, and we talked with mentors, and there were conversations along the lines of, wow, that sounds kind of risky, and there were conversations with Air Force mentors who said, if you do that, your career is over. I mean, if you even hint at that. You say, okay, well, sometimes God calls you to some risky things. And there was a program at that time in the Air Force whereby pilots who typically, after training, have an active duty service commitment. But the program was opened up because the Air Force at that time had too many pilots. And they said, we'll waive your service commitment if you're approved for this program. And so I went in, I grabbed all the paperwork, I filled all the paperwork out. I went in on Monday morning, dropped the paperwork, and they said, sir, that program closed out on Friday afternoon at 4:30. You are the number one non-select. Huh, that's confusing. All right, so we took another assignment and went on, and at the next assignment, tried to get out of the Air Force again, and just door slammed right in my face again, our face again. And so we're confused and trying to pray through this. God, we've said we're willing, just send us. And so I was reading in Scripture, and this passage is in a couple of the Gospels, but it's in Luke 7 that I'll point to this morning. And I'm reading through. Jesus goes into Capernaum. A Roman centurion approaches him and says, "My servant is ill, and would you heal my servant?" And Jesus says, "Sure, let's go to your house and we'll take care of the servant." And the centurion says, No, that's not necessary. I know I'm a man under authority, and I know that if you simply say the word, that my servant will be healed. I say to a Roman soldier, go, and he goes, and back and forth. And so I'm thinking through that scripture, and I'm praying on it, and I'm meditating on it, and it finally dawns on me what Jesus did not tell the centurion to do. What Jesus did not tell the centurion to do is, I'll heal your servant, but only if you get out of the military. Only if you leave the Roman legion. only if you lay all that aside. That's not what Jesus said at all. Jesus said, wow, I've never seen faith like this, and your servant's healed. And I came back to Nancy and I said, uh-oh. I think the ministry God has for us is actually in uniform and in the Air Force. And so some really, humanly speaking, Air Force personnel systemly speaking, unbelievable things started happening in my career. I got jobs I didn't apply for that were really enviable. I got commands that were of units that were supposed to be where the also-rans go, but those units behind the scenes had been repurposed and they were looking to go a completely different direction, and so they wanted a different type of leader in those units. It also meant a big burden, looking back on it, and actually even at the time, we certainly saw it as a burden, where we were asked to move very quickly, place to place to place. So in a series of 5 years, we moved 6 times. And so there was certainly an impact on family.
So I got really good at unpacking boxes and setting down roots. And I think the way the Lord led us at that time was, okay, Lord, you have called us to this, but we need to be equipped. And I think that was just a really sweet season of life to see that with each move, no matter where we went, God would equip. He would provide something, not even what we expected it to be. Often I would have in my mind, okay, Lord, when I move, I'm going to need to have, well, there were several things, a dentist, a hairdresser, and, I have priorities. And a good church and a good friend. I just needed a good friend. And he didn't always provide exactly what I thought I needed, but he always provided just what he knew we needed. So we moved to Alabama, and the moving...
Just prior to 9/11.
Yeah, just right before 9/11. And we were kind of in the middle of nowhere, in the kind of backwoods of Alabama. That's where the Lord had kind of provided a house for us. The moving van pulled away, and before it had even turned the corner, we had a knock on our door. And a young man, they're younger than we are.
A lot of people we're talking to are younger than we are.
No, anyway, that's irrelevant. But he came by and he said, it was right before 4th of July, and he came by and he said, welcome to the neighborhood. We want to have you out to our house on the lake, and we're going to go boating and barbecuing. We'll celebrate 4th of July, and then on Sunday, we'll see you at Sunday school, and we'll save a spot in the pew at church for you, and then afterwards, we're all going to go to Mama Bell's for dinner. And we just went, what even is this? But that was just how the Lord was going to provide for us that year. And we have just been blessed to see year after year, move after move. Our move here to Brooklyn was our 20th in 26 years of marriage. And so we can just look back and no, it's not always been easy. I think I was just sharing with Lynn that I really had to kind of figure out, okay, how am I going to get a gallon of milk and a watermelon home from the grocery store? Can you do that in New York City? So I think the real message for us has been that where the Lord calls, he is also going to equip and provide.
Well, and as we watched all that play out over our married life and over my career in the Air Force and the relationships that Nancy got so good at forging, we started to get a little more proficient, we think, in some ways, of discerning what God was calling us to next. And so when Greg Thornberry approached me, now if Greg were here today, he might dispute the exact language I'm about to use, but the message was essentially, hey, you're closer to the end of this Air Force thing than you are the beginning, let's face it. What are you thinking about doing next? And have you ever considered higher education? Well, of course, our daughter Jessica was at King's, and for 3 of the 4 years, Jess was a student here. Nancy and I were on the Parents Advisory Council. So for those of you on the PAC, be cautious, be careful. You never know where that could go. And through the course of that, we got to know the staff and the faculty a bit better, got to know the city a bit better, and started looking at each other going, wow, is this what God is calling us to next? And I got deployed in early 2016, was able to get back just prior to Jess's commencement in that year, and joined the administration here at King's in the fall of 2016. And that, watching God lead us through that decision process was so amazing, because it was right about the point where we would say, okay, well, if we don't have this piece of information from the Air Force, or if we don't see this opportunity in the city open up no later than, pick a date, whatever it is, then we're going to take that as God giving us an off-ramp, and maybe we're not getting the call that we think we're getting. And without fail, things in the Air Force presented this sense of release, and things at King's presented this sense of call. And it was very important to us that whatever we went on to do after the Air Force was something we could serve in together. That's how it's always been. When I go downrange with the unit, Nancy's got the spouses, she's got the families, she's got the, all the things that she's caring for and volunteering through and leading. And so King's for us has just been this amazing, inexplicable, humanly speaking, fit of all the things that we knew we really valued and wanted, not necessarily where we thought we were going to end up being, but it's given us the opportunity to serve together. It's given us the opportunity to come alongside amazing staff and faculty and students and alumni, and just be part of the work that God's doing here in New York City, beyond New York City, but all through the King's College. So we really do value the time with you all today. Thank you for investing your effort to be here. If you have not read through the year in review that just came off the presses this week, I'm going to ask you to do that either digitally or in hard copy. I got goosebumps reading through all the stuff that you all are doing in that book, in that magazine, and that's just in the last year. So thanks for being here. It's been a very unexpected journey for us, but it was all unlocked meditating on Luke chapter 7. So we value Scripture, we value how it impacts our lives and frames our thinking. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dean Leedy, our Dean of Students, who will introduce the public reading of Scripture, and then we'll move on with our morning. Thanks, everyone.